stoners of Reddit, what's the best idea you've come up with while stoned? Fucking this. I saw the Cheetos paws in the aisle the other day and haven't had them since I was a kid. Family movie night last night was so much fun. Had a little up and watched Harry Potter with wife and 7-year-old, then brought out the paws. Was high-fiving my kid with the paws while eating them and watching the movie. She loved it all and it was amazing. Edit, inserted link to pics of paws. Freshman year of college. Longer ago than I care to admit, my roommate first semester smoked a lot of weed. He would go to McDonald's and get 2 Big Macs, eat one, and put the other and then bend his desk lamp down. You know, the one everyone had in the 90s and 2000s that clamped onto things and had like a bendable neck. Basically just held a light bulb and had a switch on the back of the housing, over it like a heat lamp. He would then go out and get stoned to bejesus with his buddies. He would come home later and be surprised that the magical Big Mac that appeared out of nowhere for him. It was like he had a time machine and went back and placed it for himself. It never failed that every time he got so happy when he saw it. Haha, we did something similar with Subway. At one point they had some ridiculously good deal on footlong subs after 8 p.m., because who has Subway for dinner? So we would get a footlong sub and some cookies, eat half, then get stoned. Then at some point we would get the munchies and remember we still had a 6-inch sandwich and cookies left and it felt like the best thing ever. Did something similar years ago. Got absolutely ripped with my girlfriend and brainstormed the best list of snacks and easy things to cook ever. I'm sure it took us over an hour to make. Went to bed, woke up to a ridiculous list. The list started to venture beyond food as it went on and we both decided we were complete idiots. We decided to go buy everything on that list that day, regardless. We got tripped again with said items in the apartment that night and I've never eaten so well or giggled so much in my life. The toy dinosaur to pop off the Henry soda bottle cap like Godzilla was definitely a highlight. We bought 4 6-packs of Henry's in different flavors. The foam disc kids guns for super cheap were a massive hit while we downed a box of Little Debbie Swiss cake rolls and pretended to be stormtroopers. Good times. Get a stainless steel double-walled ice cream bowl. Yes, you need one. Pour in a cup of frozen, pitted cherries. Add a cup of cereal. Frosted mini wheats are perfect for this. Even unsweetened cereals work well. Top up with cold milk and stir. Wait just long enough for the cherries to partially defrost and for the milk to get really cold. Enjoy. Each bite should have cereal and a cherry. I crave this more than ice cream at times, sober or faded, and it's better for you. If you make it right, you feel a delightful cold sensation in your palate, esophagus, chest and stomach without ever getting an ice cream headache. Poor man's bingsu parfait. This sort of happened to my friend's younger brother. He was high and decided to drive to the gas station 2 blocks away to get some snacks. Problem was he was so high that he always walked to the place, so he walked back home. He forgot and the next day he called my friend and his mom asking if they borrowed his car and ended up filing a police report. I don't know who found it but it made me laugh. It's more satisfying to chew on both sides. I always get annoyed when there's an uneven number of small things like M&Ms or someone gives me just one peanut or something. Like, I want to chew symmetrically. Explaining this would make me sound like a greedy psycho trying to score extra peanuts for personal gain, so I just bite the one thing and have to chew the halves separately. But internally I'm a little disappointed. I'm taking naming suggestions for this one. 10% royalties. Get yourself a pop can of cinnamon roll balls. Pop out 2 at a time. Resist the temptation to eat them raw. Any consistency should be fine as long as they're not completely frozen. Heat up your waffle iron to high, light butter coat optional, but not necessary. 2 dough balls per waffle grid. Close the iron and apply light pressure. You should get a little bit of steam from the excess moisture. Hold for 10-20 seconds. Let up when the vapors start to thin out. Careful because they'll burn quick, and burn cinnamon waffles is way worse than burn regular waffles. When they're cooked all the way through, they don't stick. Repeat thrice until you have a giant stack of cinnamon waffles. Spread a thin layer of the pop can icing on each one. Trust me here, less is more. I could eat the whole tub of icing with a spoon and not blink, but the cinnamon waffle icing combo is potent and a conservative ratio must be respected. End result: fluffy, slightly chewy cinnamon embedded waffles with a cream cheese glaze. Prep time: less than 5 minutes. Cook time: greater than 5 minutes. Serving size: 1 stone collegiate freshman or 4 stone 30-o adults. Used to work at a Wendy's where pretty much all the employees were lethally stoned at any given time, especially those of us who usually work closing. Anyway, one particularly slow day we just went out to the parking lot and smoked a joint and then came back inside and made baconator fries, but put literally every cheese in the store in them and a ton more bacon and mixed them up in one of the salad cartons. It was great. I worked there in the 80s as teen. Got the job at 15. For some reason when you are in trouble with as a teen they think getting a job is a good idea. We used to take the chili powder and powder the chicken before prepping it. We then put it on a big classic bun, dress it as if it was a single with everything, no cheese, no bacon, plus Wendy's chili oil. It was my favorite sandwich for a long time. I'd order my chicken on the Kaiser bun and ask for the chili oil. It wasn't as good without the breading seasoned. Not as epic mealtime as your story. But if there are any Wendy's workers out there, try it, even without the big classic bun. Me and my buddy started to organize an idea for a movie script about how cats are aliens and dogs are the true friends who are trying to save us. We were inspired by the idea that he had this cat who'd only show up when we smoked, like it was spying on us. We talked about the idea for like 20 minutes before realizing that's already a movie franchise and we were just fucking high as shit. It's a bad idea, but it's the best idea when you're stoned. I was baked and playing Skyrim, realized just how satisfying hours of side quests can be. I want an RPG that is all side quests. The main plot is happening to someone else. Your primary focus is to bring that nice old lady some flowers, or to clear trolls from a cave. Let the other guy deal with the big bad demons or war or whatever. You've got an errand to run for the shopkeep. You do get affected by the war, etc. A bridge blew out, so you have to take another route. Supplies are low, so prices are climbing and you have to really hunt for things. You overhear people in town complaining about burnt fields or having fearful conversations in the pub. Every now and then you'll see a dude in crazy armor sprint by, but mostly you're just going about your day. If it was done right, I'd play TF out of that game. Call it Samaritan, maybe. I'd play the hell out of that too. Depends on how involved you want your character to be in the storyline. But, maybe the final quest could be the hero coming to you for help, battered and nearly defeated, depending on you for some key weapon that you learn how to make over time. The sturdy handle made from the finest wood from the carpenter you helped, the blade from the blacksmith, who gave you his own knife after you saved his son by delivering medicine, the magic imbued in the blade from this old lady just before she passed away because you were so sweet to her for months by cleaning her house and bringing her favorite berries each week, or something, etc. And so you're the only person in the city who knows from all your experiences all the skills necessary to craft this final thing the hero needs. Watching South Park, I decided that most social media is high risk low reward and I'd rather be blissfully ignorant. It's tremendously improved my happiness. I say most PC Reddit, to me doesn't count. I'm more of a lurker and liker and my algorithm on here only shows me happy things and memes. Sometimes I won't understand memes because I've removed myself from how I was receiving news. Sometimes I feel kinda behind but I always feel happier than I used to looking at everyone's garbage. The idea that it's okay for me to be this relaxed completely sober. Life doesn't always have to be such a horrendous worry. Just holding on to the thoughts I had with the clearest head in a while after taking my first edible. I have issues with anxiety, depression, panic, PTSD. I'm not a stoner by any means but I think weekly or bi-weekly edibles might become routine for me just to center myself again. So I was in the shower one night, enjoying the nice hot water, and then came the time to soap up. I grabbed this fancy soap bar that I received as a gift, and that's when it struck me. Why don't I order myself some nice fancy soap bars online? Now, I'm a grown-ass man. Where would I find such soap bars? Well, turns out that Amazon has some, but surprisingly, Simon's, in Canada, has a cool selection of those. So I ordered for $100 of random soap bars. Sometimes, the little things are the best to enjoy. My buddy and I were climbing a tree and we accidentally broke a branch off. Feeling bad about leaving the branch to die, we decided its best chance of survival was to stick it in the mud. Our hope was that it would sprout some roots and sort itself out. But there was a problem. The branch wasn't shedding enough light, and definitely not enough light to magically sprout roots and turn into a new tree. Our solution? Rip down all the trees around it that were blocking the light. We had already pushed a small tree over and were working on the second one by the time we realized that we had become the very thing we were trying to avoid. So yay, not our brightest tower. Edit. So I thought the title was asking for worst idea. I lived for a while in East Africa, and we could buy lots and lots of bushweed, but no skins or filters or tobacco or the like. But the weed was weak enough that we just smoked it unadulterated. To make joints, we used to take straws from the bar, and use the McDonald's-style paper covers as skins, and take the straw out and refill with weed, and a roach did the job, and made for gigantic joints. It took a couple of weeks for the hostel owner to notice that whenever we stayed with him, the usage of straws went through the roof. When we ran out of those, he told us to go and find a pawpaw tree, and pull a leaf off, and keep the entire stem. It's a hollow stem, and has a handy bowl shape to the end of the stem, where it emerged from the tree branch. Sorted, we thought, and hired one of the local kids to come back with a branch of a pawpaw tree. He was like 8, and didn't have solid English, and he and a gaggle of his mates came back 10 minutes later dragging an entire tree, freshly pulled from the ground, about 10 feet tall. Make a long story short, we used all the leaves of the tree, and were idly tossing the denuded tree trunk about the place, when one of us dropped it, and broke it. We saw that the entire tree trunk was hollow, just like the stems, and were able to fashion a gigantic pipe out of each end of the broken trunk. Felt like a bunch of fucking garvers. We did. Anyone got a similar tale of ingenuity? Best idea, I'll become a hairdresser. I was 20 smoking a joint just sitting there. I did a few months at a community college and really didn't know what I was interested in. And then I was sitting back smoking a joint and I just came to my head like bam, and I looked up at school near me that was one of the best schools for hair where I lived. I enrolled and I'm still doing it almost 20 years later. I've traveled everywhere and worked on many different projects throughout the years. I'm more into real estate now, but I'm still at the salon a couple times a week. I also cut outside the shop and do weddings once in a while. One of the better ideas. Hear me out. I remember getting stoned after my human evolution class and came to the conclusion that the royal families of the world were effectively attempting to separate from the human species through selective breeding. Now, we all know it did not last, but imagine if the royal families remained separate for another 10,000 plus years. Prefacing this with completed ideas versus stoned ideas that will be followed up on a future stoned date are different beasts. Stoned idea, become a hacker. Stoned idea follow up, use MJ to escape worse addictions and channel that energy into computers. I wound up making stupid money as a software engineer instead of working in food as a high school dropout. It is still my favorite hobby and haven't stepped foot back in school. I write cryptography, steganography tools in my free time. I've spent my entire career stoned. It was even encouraged at some places I worked. Lots of smoked lunches. My friend and I were sitting at my kitchen table talking about making some pancakes. He suggested it would be amazing to have maple syrup already in them for a less messy ordeal. Then went on to talk about using them as bread for a breakfast sandwich. We both got more and more excited thinking about adding bacon and eggs to the mix. Then we realized we were both just reinventing, talking about griddles. I came up with a theory to help lower-paid workers earn more by requiring the highest salaries to be limited by the average worker's salary times some multiplier. This would include stocks and bonuses and be required by any company receiving a federal contract, creating a county-based minimum wage by using the average price to rent a one-bedroom apartment in that county and the 30% rule, meaning if you work a 40-hour week then no more than 30% should go to rent. The lowest minimum wage if done by state would be West Virginia at $14.25. Homeless rehab centers based on closed malls, transitional housing along the ring road that goes around the mall, green space in between. The food court can easily handle meals, room for offices for aid and housing, lawyers, medical treatment, and mental health services, room for a school for the kids. There would also be plenty of room for work training such as cooks in the kitchen. You can train nurses in the medical facilities. There's room to add some construction or other vocational training programs. If you set up sites in multiple states, you could also help people transition to areas where it's safer or has more opportunities, and also help if people want to relocate closer to their families. I came up with 1. A theory to help lower-paid workers earn more by requiring the highest salaries to be limited by the average worker's salary times some multiplier. This would include stocks and bonuses and be required by any company receiving a federal contract. Ben and Jerry's Petri Dish. In a previous Ellen Day article, authored by Chris Crawford, we covered Ben and Jerry's attempt to limit CEO compensation during the 1990s. The then small ice cream company, with founders at the helm, and now large conglomerate, once had a 5-to-1 rule, like Plato's, where the CEO total compensation could not be any higher than 5 times that of the lowest paid employee, or in this case approximately $80,000. When Ben Cohen was set to retire, and search for a new CEO began, the ratio was increased to 7-to-1. Realizing the ineffectiveness of the ratio's ability to attract, retain and motivate a valid candidate, the company decided on a 17-to-1 ratio in 2000. By the way, this amount did not take stock option grants into account. Shortly after the 17-to-1 total cash modification, the pay cap was abandoned. My concept addressed the issue of lack of drive-ins to see movies. It modernized the entire affair by eliminating the need to drive, bringing the drive-in to any part of the planet and increasing the wow factor exponentially in the process. Now imagine sending up satellites shaped like your typical HD TV and stringing thousands, millions of them together to create a giant display surface orbiting the planet in Leo. Each individual display would function as a pixel. Altogether they would resemble a giant HD TV thousands of miles in size. Sound, no problem. Each person would wear a headset or earbuds for optimal sound quality. It would all be paid for by advertising, of course, so shows would be free for those that would want to watch. I would imagine it would be quite the communal event if it were possible, with entire swaths of space turning into giant picnics of sorts. I definitely have to rate this one as up there, or out there, on my personal list of ideas created while under the influence. Better Applebee's. Basically, you can pay regular Applebee's prices and get their regular food, but at like a 30% markup, you can get a more gourmet dining experience. The wife and I were binging Parks and Rec, getting Applebee's appetizers a few times a week, and then they discontinued the cheeseburger egg rolls. I said I would pay a little extra if they brought them back, then expanded on the idea and said I'd pay a small premium to have access to a better menu. I was writing a BBS program in QB 4.5 in the mid-90s. I had to write what was essentially the input command, except for serial I/O. I wrote the original over coffee one morning, sober. It worked really well. A few days later I'm high on my porch with some of my friends and get an epiphany. So I go in the house to my room, open the window of the porch, and start writing. It was less than half the size when I was finished. Might have taken 20 minutes. Did bong hits with people on the porch while listening to Portishead. Watching South Park, I decided that, most Social media is high risk low reward and I'd rather be blissfully ignorant. It's tremendously improved my happiness. I say most PC Reddit, to me doesn't count. I'm more of a lurker and liker and my algorithm on here only shows me happy things and memes. Sometimes I won't understand memes because I've removed myself from how I was receiving news. Sometimes I feel kinda behind but I always feel happier than I used to looking at everyone's garbage.